We want actions. We are talking lives. We are talking about the safety of our beloved ones.
Hunger strike on Parliament Hill. Former Afghan interpreters who helped Canada's military mission in Afghanistan are holding their second hunger strike within 6 months. They're urging the government to speed up the immigration process for their families still stuck abroad. The government has committed to resettle 40,000 Afghans after the country's fall to the Taliban this past summer. Ottawa says now only a quarter, approximately 10,000 Afghans, have actually been resettled so far. The Liberals did create new immigration pathways for the extended family members of interpreters, but interpreters say of the nearly 300 people that have used the new pathway, not one extended family member has arrived in Canada. Have the federal government done enough to help stranded Afghans, and how will they address the hunger strike? Meantime, today, Ukrainian MPs met with the Prime Minister. What more will Canada do for Ukrainian refugees? By the way, over 4 million of them right now. 100,000 have applied to Canada at least. Let's bring in Immigration Minister Sean Fraser. Welcome back, Minister. I know you've said, and you said to me, and you've said that the government are facing obstacles facing us in Afghanistan that were not present in other large-scale resettlement efforts. What do you tell these interpreters who are having a hunger strike, why Canada can't overcome these obstacles?
Look, first, Evan, let me say that it's important to recognize that we are seeing a regular pace of arrivals now from Afghanistan. I was on hand yesterday when a cohort of nearly 300 Afghan refugees transiting from Tajikistan through Frankfurt landed at the Pearson International Airport. And with that plane, there's now more than 10,000 Afghan refugees living safely in Canada. That's more people than live in my hometown and the town of Glasgow. That said, we know that there are still people that need to come. If it were a matter of political will, 40,000 people will have been here already. One of the reasons that there's particular challenges is in Afghanistan, we didn't just make a commitment to any 40,000 people. It's included specific commitments to individuals who worked alongside our troops or their family members. Some of the unique kinds of situations that we run into that don't involve obstacles put up by the government of Canada include the fact that when people may get to Pakistan, Pakistan may require they have a valid Afghanistan passport before they let them exit. Of course, when you have to deal with the Taliban to have a valid passport issued since the fall of Kabul, that becomes a virtual impossibility for some people that we've made a commitment to. Despite these logistical challenges, we're going to continue to work every day to do what we can to get these people here. We made a commitment, and I intend to make good on that commitment.
Well, you know, some of these people actually burned their passports or tossed them out because the Taliban may be tracking them. Some things that some of the Afghan interpreters have asked for are, for example, why has the government not started to pay for safe houses for their families to keep them safe while they can try to get through this system?
There's a number of different conversations that we've had, and this was an issue a number of months ago when we were initially working with groups on the ground. We want to make sure that our focus is on getting people into the program as quickly as possible, and not everyone's facing identical challenges. So to roll out a particular program that may be appropriate for one person doesn't necessarily solve the problem for many of the other folks as well. One of the other challenges that exists as a matter of Canadian law that you have to be careful not to be financing terrorist regimes. The Taliban, of course, is a listed terrorist entity in Canadian law, and we want to make sure that to the extent we find an ability to support people, we're not directly financing the operations of the Taliban.
But you know, I get that. I mean, to be fair, there are third parties who are working with these, and really good third parties who are working with these families to keep them safe, who the Canadian government could fund to avoid that money. They're working on the ground. We don't have an embassy there. They could help these people. You know, there's a pretty easy route around that. There's third parties that are doing that work already.
And we want to continue to have conversations with those third parties to figure out how we can secure the safe transit of people outside of Afghanistan or potentially from a third country onwards. Those aren't the only challenges that we're facing, though. Even there are people who have been approved to come to Canada and Afghanistan by the thousands for months, even since before my appointment in October of last year. And the fact is, a lot of them don't have the ability to transit safely through Afghanistan or leave Afghanistan to go on to another country. If we could choose any 40,000 Afghan nationals, it would be much simpler, but we didn't choose any 40,000 Afghan nationals. We chose people who've made a significant and enduring contribution to the government of Canada during our time in Afghanistan. And when those individuals face particular challenges, we have to try to solve them on a case-by-case basis. And it is challenging, not wavering in our commitment.
Will you go out and meet with these interpreters who are hunger striking?
I've met with them before, and I'm open to meeting with them again. They're in touch with our staff on a near weekly basis. We want to do everything we can to help them. We created a specific immigration stream, as you mentioned in your opening, for the extended families of previously settled Afghan interpreters because we want to help them. The situation in Afghanistan is heartbreaking, but to also have layered upon that challenging situation, a circumstance where you're torn apart from your family. If you're a human being, you feel enormous empathy for these people who served Canada. I want to help them. I want to work with them. I want to work with partners in the region to do what we can to facilitate the travel of their family members to Canada. It's not a matter of wanting, it's a matter of getting it done, and we're going to continue to work until we do get it done.